Do you care about the things you're invested in? Do you meticulously check on your $5 worth of penny stocks to see if their value has increased by a percentage? Do you invest time into these investments to get better at making said investments? Sure, maybe you do. But what about the things you aren't invested in? Do you meticulously check the growth of some random Chinese company's stock? Do you invest time into the expansion of some random German car company you've never heard the name of? Well, of course not. Because you aren't invested into it, and it'd be foolish to obsess over some bullshit that you really don't have any stake in. In that same vein, is it not foolish to obsess over other bullshit online? Is it not the mark of a fucking fool as being someone who browses through all the bullshit and garbage content you see everywhere on the internet and eventually get emotionally charged, attached, and invested into some random thing they aren't actually going to invest in nor care about? Case in point, Twitter, the cesspool of the internet, where random people wasting their time for no discernible reason will both post about things irrelevant to anyone's lives and keep attempting to emotionally charge the fuck out of the people and get them to start caring about the issue. They'll use their inflammatory words, as they're called, comment whatever the fuck it takes. They'll misrepresent the truth. They'll purposefully misinterpret things. They'll call you names. They'll insult your character. And all this in an attempt to get you riled up and drive their post engagement. Now, do I really need to tell you this? Or is it all obvious from the get-go? I'd argue the second point, but it's good to know the devil we're dealing with right now. The thing is, though, none of it really ever matters. Especially when it comes to the test of time, as even the people who do fall for this bait, who start investing into these problems or arguments, almost always fuck off and waste their time someplace else, eventually. They realize, or maybe even not consciously, but they understand, that they aren't actually truly invested in the shit the other guy spews, and up to either invest into something they care about, which tends to actually be quite rare, or keep browsing until some other smooth talker, smooth brain, gets them repeating the whole process. This is why quote-unquote Twitter activism and online activism in general nearly never works. Your change.org petitions, your complaining online, incessantly complaining, never ever goes anywhere. Mountains tend not to be moved by words. And the only thing that actually does solve problems and move mountains is actual investment of time and money into the understanding of the problem, and then its subsequent solution. But we've all heard this before, haven't we? It's all by another name, virtue signaling. It's the mark of someone who really does not care about a problem you've outlined if the first thing they jump to do, they're ready to do, is sign an online petition and do nothing more. With the eventual impact these attempts to make a change have, it's as good as not having done a damn thing. But nevertheless, people will post online about their quote-unquote contributions and feel proud of themselves for doing so. But what is there to be proud of if nothing was accomplished? You could say it's the journey, not the destination. But then again, is a 15-second walk in the park really something to be proud of for the person capable of so much more? I think not. All of this is the byproduct of the greater idea I'd like to put forward in this video. That being, not allowing yourself to invest your emotions and energy into shit you aren't actually invested into. Sometimes, shit's just not relevant to you, and that is it. Because the lack of relevancy of a personal reason or connection, purpose to get involved, there's just nothing actual, there's nothing tangible going to get done. Lives will not change. Problems will not be solved. So what is the point of wasting your time and energy in shit you just don't care about? I'd argue there isn't one. There hasn't been for a long time. because they aren't going to solve the problems. Now, don't take this to heart and start being a cold, unfeeling prick to everything that isn't directly relevant to you, because that's socially unacceptable. But it helps to be conscious of what you're investing into shit when you're investing into shit that doesn't matter. What's more beneficial in general is actually to just put more eggs into one basket, as they say, rather than signing 50 online petitions that'll get you nowhere or get the problem nowhere. Instead, opt to go boots on the ground or pay someone else to learn what the fuck's going on and be there physically. The way I see it, you can either have 2% efforts into 50 different products, many eggs in many different baskets, or 100% effort, all of your eggs in one basket. It's easy to assume that both these approaches would hold the same effective tangible value as the same amount of eggs. But that's never the case with what gets done. To truly solve a problem, it is imperative that you not only have someone who's given it their all, their 100% to solving it, but you also have them teach others about the problem and how it's relevant to them, so that you get the manpower to make larger changes so that others invest into it, because it tends to be very difficult to solve problems on one's own. Now, a good example of this, and I don't exactly support the movement, but the Black Lives Matter protests operated in much the same way. The goal of the movement, however, was something very different to what was proposed. Rather than being a movement for social change and the treatment of black lives, it was instead operated in a manner that would make the owners as much money as possible, at the expense of the very people they were trying to help. The effects and after effects paint much the same picture, as rather than properly educating people of the problem they were supposedly trying to solve, they instead riled them the fuck up with the quote-unquote unjust deaths of the few black people, and used that as the fuel for the eventual protests that swept America. All that was accomplished is that people who knew not about a problem were now getting emotionally invested into it, and what that causes is fucking chaos. Because they're now trying to get others invested, as they have, but to verify their own investments, but they have no idea why they're invested in the first place. And that's why, if you look at the clips and the videos people took out of the actual physical protests, everyone is a fucking bumbling idiot. They're all so stupid, and they're just stampeding across the roads. And that approach is very unlike the quote-unquote peaceful protests that would have likely resulted from properly teaching them what the fuck's going on. Because they didn't show that image very well at all. I think it's pretty obvious. It didn't work. All it did was funnel money into the pockets of those who started the movement, and left people polarized to all hell and back for no fucking reason. The problem was not solved, and the black image was not improved as a result, nor were black lives. Even now, if you take a look at what's changed, things will look awfully similar to before the protests. Because even with such a massive amount of people, the potential to ameliorate the situation, the people involved weren't actually invested into the problem. They didn't really... They acted like they were, but they weren't. They didn't actually care. They fucked around in the streets, people were shot dead, shops were looted, and nothing changed. Now, none of that would have happened if they actually gave a shit about the problem. Now, had the people up above and those involved actually cared about the social standing of black people and their image, they'd have likely done the research, as people do, and learned why they are where they are in the social hierarchy and how to fix it. I seriously doubt that by going back 120 years and learning about the conditions of black people in North America specifically would bring people to the conclusion that the solution is to donate money to a shady charity, a shady movement really, and cause political and social unrest in the country. It just doesn't sound reasonable, because it sure as hell wasn't. Let this be a lesson to you and to all. $90 million was given to this movement. $90 million. That's quite a bit of money. It's more than most of the population will ever see in their life. $90 million was given to this movement, spearheaded by the emotionally charged, trying to solve a problem they don't actually care about or are educated enough to understand, and not 1 cent of this figure was spent changing the lives of anyone the movement was all about. Black lives, black people. It's like a Twitter petition with more steps, because in the end, the people involved, all of them, invested into a problem they do not truly care about. I'd advise you to avoid the same fate.